Hey guys, where's the volume at? Here we go. Welcome, guys. Welcome. Start of the stream. End of the week, Friday. I found myself in a bit of a groove. I'm pumped to be firing up the stream and getting more consistent with our schedule. We've got Karen Williams and Chris Gebauer joining us later for our first three-person sit-down, little roundtable style. We'll make sure that we get the two-guest overlay working, and hoping that we can make this a regular deal. I'm pumped to chat about a few different things, a few topical conversations in the gaming world in particular. There's never a shortage of tangents and other silliness that I'm sure will come up between Karen, Chris, and I. I know Rachel and Simone, I'm hoping to get on their schedules. We can make sure we get them in the stream next week. I'd love to have them both on together. And then I think there's a whole other conversation to be had between Simone and Chris about horror games and all the overlaps. There's so many different things to discuss. I already know what I want to talk about, at least to lead things off. So in about an hour, Chris and Karen are going to join me, and I'm excited to see how that's going to go. So we're just going to get right into it, guys. Let's get into our Wordle. Let's loosen up. Let's put our game face on. It's time to put up or shut up here. Okay. Let's see. What do we want to start with? Stain. ST. Okay, not in the right spot. Maybe we put the T and the S at the end. Maybe we need. Let's do poets. We get the S and the T. We get two other vowels. Okay, we've got the T. That's not bad. We still don't have our vowel. I guess we're looking at U. We could be looking at like nutty, right? Something like that. We could have two T's and a Y. U-T-T-Y. No. Gutty, huddy. Guess what? I would have guessed it if I didn't guess the P. Maybe we stay away from the double letter guess because there doesn't seem anything clear here. I gotta figure out where to put this S right now. So I wouldn't put the U at the end. So blank S U U S. And then what's after the T? Maybe the H. But then S-U-T-H? No. We've still got the R here. Trust. I've been going hard on the double letters. We've had a lot of double letter answers recently. I feel like we could buck that trend. But I'm not against it. I guess we got the H. South? No, because the S isn't first. Gotta get that R in there. R. U-S-T. Rusts? No. Rusty? Rusty. Okay. That gets the U in there. It gets the R in there, which we think are in the word. The S it puts in the middle. It keeps the T in the right place, and it gets the Y in there too. That's a nice guess. Okay, Dusty. We're looking at Dusty, right? Has to be. Gusty. It could be gusty. It could be gusty. Do you think they're being topical with all the hurricane stuff? Gusty? Yeah, let's go. Yes. Okay. That felt pretty good. That felt pretty good, I gotta say. Let's share this here. Simone, welcome to the chat. Let's go. I felt like I always feel great when we get a 3, but that 4 felt good, given that I was just about to blow it with Dusty. We're gonna throw that into daily games. Hiya! Yeah. That's definitely got to be a Milton reference, right? Shout out to my Florida peeps. Hopefully everyone's okay. I think the prevailing feeling seems to be that it just wasn't as bad as it could have been. That it just decreased strength just enough before it made landfall. That it wasn't as catastrophic. Thankfully, my dad lives in Florida and he didn't evacuate. So very thankful that things didn't get quite as catastrophic as it was with Helene. And then right as they catch their breath, I think they're looking at another storm like next week, right? Let's see, Florida hurricane. Next hurricane. There's another one, right? Tracking 3 systems. Oh, okay. Are more hurricanes heading for Florida? Not at the moment. Well, I guess, okay, they're not at the moment, but they're tracking. This is all Milton stuff. Hurricane Leslie. That must be old news. Well, thankfully, hopefully the people get time to breathe down there. I don't know how anyone's able to get insurance these days in Florida. It's pretty crazy, the amount of widespread destruction because of these hurricanes. Just terrible stuff. I had a friend who used to live in Florida who moved to Michigan. I want to say like 4 or 5 years ago. They did a bunch of research. They actually moved to a place that through their research they thought would be the best place to go in advance of global warming. They moved to Michigan. They found a place in Michigan that they feel like, based on all these variables, is like one of the best places in the country to live. If you're acutely concerned about near-term global warming effects, which is pretty wild. That's like where we're at now. I think it's going to be pretty hard for people to justify moving to Florida these days with every year things just get wiped out. Let's see. Let's run it. Ooh, speaking of wiped out. Yo, is this an action movie or is this like a National Lampoon's Family Vacation we got here? I don't know what explosion this is. I feel like this is either awesome action movie or satire, right? Like Blues Brothers or something. This could be like a Stallone. Is this like a First Blood or something like that? I'm not gonna get it off the explosion. Let's just throw out a okay. Spider. All right. Immediately I hear Spider, I think Home Alone, but this definitely precedes Home Alone. What do we got over here? Some old magazines, big hair, it looks like. I think we're looking at like the late 70s, early 80s. Based on everything that I'm seeing here, cigarettes, pattern couch, what looks like super flammable clothing. And then this giant spider we got here. And again, I'm getting kind of satire vibes, almost kind of Fargo-y. But this is early stuff. Kind of like, geez, I know it's not Raising Arizona, but that's the vibe that I'm getting, is like early Coen brothers. Let's do Family Vacation. I know where... No. National Lampoons, no. Not an option. I feel like I need to throw something out here just to get to the next frame. Let's throw out Boogie Nights. Okay, curly-haired man. This is resonating. Late 70s. Geez, are we... I don't know. I don't know. This doesn't look like a modern movie made about an old movie. I guess, again, given the resolution here, you got to take that into consideration. This looks like a movie about the time, made during the time. Let's go like Serpico. No? Maybe like Dog Day Afternoon. I'm not getting it, guys. I'm whiffing hard here. I'm not seeing what I need to see here. I'm just throwing these out. Don't be mad at me. Oh no, there's no way. Is this the one with the kids and the Russians? Red Dawn? Red Dawn? No. Is that meant to be a phone? Is that a walkie-talkie? I don't know, guys. I don't know what the answer is. Let's guess. We're just gonna throw something random out there because I have no clue. I have no clue. Well, I know this isn't the Blues Brothers. I know it isn't. Oh, The Hills Have Eyes. God damn. God damn. Oh, no. Simone, you must have known this one. You must have known this one, right? Oh. God damn. It's The Hills Have Eyes. All right, we got it. I can't be upset. It's just like, this is the only person, the only actor that I recognize from this movie. I haven't seen the original Hills Have Eyes in a very long time. Maybe like high school? Right? I think I want to say the remake of Hills Have Eyes, that's, what did it say? It showed the year. Was it 2005, 2006? God damn. All right. Well, hey, I can't be mad. I'm happy I got it. All right. Ooh, here we go. Movie Pyramid. Movie Pyramid. Released from 90 to 2015. Philip Seymour Hoffman. This is going to be easy. This is going to be easy. It's about mitigating popularity here. Getting the least popular. Philip Seymour Hoffman had a bunch of like side roles. Little like not really cameos, bigger than cameos. He was in a Ben Stiller rom-com of, was it Along Came Polly? I think was the one. Ben Stiller and Philip Seymour Hoffman are buddies, and he's just like the loser friend. And he's got the basketball scene where he's like Kobe, and he's just like throwing up bricks. I think that's Along Came Polly. Yes. 6%, higher of a guess rate than I would have thought. Twister. He's the like camera guy. Kind of the same character as Along Came Polly, you know? He's just like kind of broy. Broy Philip Seymour Hoffman. Here we go. Okay, and then there's like his big ones. He's Capote and The Master are the two big ones that I would bet would be up here. I loved him in Mission Impossible 3. I think he might have been like one of the best. He might be the best Mission Impossible villains ever. Not that this franchise has the most memorable villains. Yes. Okay, and then he was in Patch Adams. He played the counter to the first two ones where he's the broy guy. He plays the stick in the mud, smart roommate to Robin Williams in Patch Adams. Let's go. 0.9% for Patch Adams. What a pull. Okay. Jamie Lee Curtis, 2-word title. True Lies is one of my favorite action movies ever. I like 90s Schwarzenegger. I love True Lies. What a great, that's up there. I should do a Schwarzenegger tier list. Oh man, maybe we just do that. Let me I bet if I search that, I bet it would produce a tier list for us to play with 90s Schwarzenegger action films. So True Lies, Jamie Lee Curtis, I guess things like Halloween 2, like Halloween and then the number for Jamie Lee Curtis. We could do like Halloween 6, Halloween Ends. The numbers must count as a word, right? When doing these things? I know Halloween Ends we'll get. Let's do Halloween Ends. Okay, fairly high percentage. Maybe I should have been a little more cautious there. True Lies, okay. Freaky Friday. She switches places with Lindsay Lohan. Let's go. Okay, all right. I got too excited. That's going to cost me some points. That's going to cost me more points than I wanted to give up. Giancarlo Esposito, 3 or more word title. Oh my gosh, he's been in so many things. Video games and Better Call Saul. Show, not movie. Man, this is gonna snag me up here. Oh man, 3 or more word title. I'm trying to think of what the heck I've seen him in. The Boys, Better Call Saul, Breaking Bad. Oh my gosh. Gonna take me a minute. I mean, great actor. Just I've seen him in so many TV shows. Three or more word title. This is going to end up costing me. I don't even think I can get one. I can name several shows. I guess the only one that would fit this bill as far as a show would be Better Call Saul. Is he in The Gentleman too? Another Netflix show, not enough words. Movie. I think I'm gonna have to just run this out. I can't think of anything. I bet it's gonna be painfully obvious too. Yeah, I think I gotta give up. I think I gotta give up. I need to know. Dude was in Do the Right Thing and The Usual Suspects. No way. Yeah, no way. I had no idea. I had no idea. And then what was the last one here? I don't. Stanley Kubrick. That would have been easy. Clockwork Orange. Title starts with A through H. Ignore the. Clockwork Orange. Guess 2001 wouldn't count. Yeah, I probably would have guessed Clockwork Orange instead of toiling over Kubrick. Rip, guys. Our first L on Movie Pyramid of the stream, but you know what? It's like sometimes that's the way it's gonna go. Let's go IMDb. Giancarlo. I don't know if it's Juan Carlo or Jean. I think it's Giancarlo. Let's see. Actor. I knew he was in Megalopolis. There's The Gentleman. Can I just show movies? Actor, but it won't separate. Moff Gideon in The Mandalorian TV series. TV series. Better Call Saul. Like, what has he done? Kaleidoscope. I saw the first episode of that and was like, ugh. Yeah, is he not? Oh, Please Don't Feed the Children. I'm not familiar with that. Dear White People. Okay. He was in Westworld. Okay. Maybe, one episode, probably in the later parts of it. That was another one that I just like. I watched the first 2 seasons and then was just like, oh, I'm done with this. It started off so strong. Okja. Yes. Is that the Bon Joon? I'm trying to think of the director's name. Bong Joon-ho. I always struggle with this. He's doing Mickey 17. I'm a big fan of the director, despite my inability to pronounce the name. Bong Joon-ho. I hope I'm getting that right. Snowpiercer, right? Snowpiercer, Okja, and Mickey 17. Love the style, love the bold moves, like awesome storytelling, awesome stories. And then always just like really beautifully done. Very and this guy never struggles to get top talent. Yeah, Gyllenhaal, Dano, Swinton. And then Mickey 17, that's Pattinson and a whole bunch of other actors in that one too. For what feels very, his stuff feels very indie, which is I think where it matters. Like these movies have heart. Very cool, very cool. Maze Runner: The Death Cure, that would have been a low percentage one. Once Upon a Time, didn't see it. Oh, that's the TV series. I thought that was a movie. Once Upon a Time. The Jungle Book. Oh, Aquila. I just watched this with my kids. This is a great movie. I'm stunned it's only got a 7.4. Wow. Wow. I was just saying it, how well casted. This is one of the best casted movies I've seen, like voiced movies. Bill Murray, Ben Kingsley as Bagheera, so good. Scarlett Johansson as Ja, and Giancarlo Esposito as Aquila. I didn't even know. Oh, and Idris Elba, Shao Kahn. Oh my gosh, what a classic. This was one of those ones where it's like, I would need to know where this lands timeline wise. 2016 in regards to like all the Disney remakes. This has got to be up there for like, this is probably my vote to be my favorite of this very sad string of live action remakes. Like your Aladdins and Lion Kings, that I did not like either of those. Jungle Book was so good. Great movie. All right, before we get too distracted, okay? Tier list. Arnold Schwarzenegger movie tier list. Here we go. Look at this. Okay. I'm gonna open, go to the template. Okay, here they are. All right, we're doing it. Let's see. What do we got here? Junior, Batman, and Robin. All right, let's get the S tiers up here. That's Terminator 2. Can I zoom into any of these? Some of these are a little hard to read. We're just gonna go straight. Let's get right into the S tier ones that we don't need to mess around. Predator's S tier. Oh gosh, there's so many stinkers. And too many that I haven't seen. I heard they were redoing Running Man. Last Action Hero, a personal one that I really enjoyed. Feels kind of cult classic-y. And then I'm going to have this whole category of ones that I just haven't seen. Let's see. We'll rename E. We'll rename this. Oops, I keep pushing the wrong button. Haven't seen. All right, let's do I haven't seen Maggie. Hercules in New York. Is that what that is? I don't know what that is. Expendables 2 and 3 I have not seen. I saw the first one. It's like you've seen them all at that point, right? Terminator. It's like this. I think this might be my controversial take. I don't know where people fall on Terminator. Next to Terminator 2, it's like, I had a discussion with a friend who felt like Terminator and Terminator 2 was kind of similar to Alien and Aliens in like, okay, successful movie, let's throw a budget at it and make it more, let's Hollywood it. And I felt like Alien holds up way better than Terminator. So it's like I can see what we're trying to do with the comparison there, but I don't think it lands for me. Just not a huge fan of the original Terminator, since T2 is just that much better. Don't know what Sabotage is. Maybe a more recent one. Is this Escape from New York? Is that like was that a remake? Terminator 3. These all stink. Stink, stink, stink. Batman and Robin. This is a tough one. It's garbage though. It's garbage. It's one of those ones that you can watch because it's like campy. What is this? Schwarzenegger and Belushi? I don't think I've seen it. Junior. Terrible. Terrible. Twins? Funny? Gosh, is it as good though as he? No, we're sliding you back down here. Commando. I think I'd probably put on the same level as Terminator. What a tier list. Yes, Karen. And maybe this is how we begin our conversation right now is Schwarzenegger. The topic of True Lies came up, and I am a True Lies stan. I love that movie. And I think hangs with Schwarzenegger's best. So we're fleshing some out here. I know that there's some doozies down here that I have not seen. 80 Days, Around the World in 80 Days, have not seen. Jingle All the Way. I gotta put that in the same category as Last Action Hero. Just kind of like silly Schwarzenegger. Kindergarten Cop, another silly Schwarzenegger, but I is a classic. I love Kindergarten Cop. Collateral Damage, of the more modern, I'd say like post-peak Schwarzenegger, I think Eraser is my favorite. I remember seeing this in the theaters when I was too young. I remember my dad bringing me and my brothers to see this movie in the theater. And I remember they had like these green like plasma guns, like railgun style, like futuristic technology. You could look at they'd look down the sight and they could like scan through buildings and it would just be like skeletons. It was like that reminds me of Total Recall. It's like they took that skeleton like airport, or was it a train station or an airport where they're like running through and they got the full body x-ray. It's like they repurposed the magic that they captured in that scene and just attached it to every cool gun in Eraser. I remember that, and I remember alligators. There was an alligator scene where they're like fighting in a zoo, and it's at night and it's raining, and a bunch of the bad guys get eaten by alligators. Very cool. Don't know what Raw Deal is. Collateral Damage, End of Days. This one is definitely up here. Was one that really surprised me and I really, really enjoyed. Total Recall. I'm going to have to revisit some of these to see if any of these get the edge to go into S tier. Sonia? Is that what that is? Haven't seen it. What is that? Cactus Jack? I can't say that I've seen that. Killing what? Let's see. Arnold Schwarzenegger. Killing Gunther. 2017. Nope. I'm like, what is this movie? Haven't seen it. My gosh. The Sixth Day is one that got, I feel like, by the time we circle back to End of Days, it's like this fits very much in that category, but never, it's like it didn't have its own identity. What is that? Let's go to Arnold Schwarzenegger. Let's go to his IMDb. We might need to cross-reference some of these. Yeah, let's cross-reference some of these with his IMDb. Stay Hungry. I don't know what that is. I know Collateral Damage. That's another one that it's like, I wish I could see these on a timeline, because like Collateral Damage and a couple of these, I feel like it's like he had a handful of stinkers in a row, and then he had like kind of a mini renaissance where he had like some quality movies where it made sense that it's not just like Arnold Schwarzenegger is in a movie and it's an Arnold Schwarzenegger movie. Conan, and then is this a sequel to Conan? I don't ever remember seeing Conan the Barbarian. Okay, and then it was Conan the Destroyer. Conan the Barbarian, solid movie. I don't think I saw Conan the Destroyer, and it looks like the it looks a full point less, and maybe I don't want this to poison me here. Man, yeah, I'm feeling bad even just looking at this. The Last Stand, and then I don't know what that is. What is that there? That looks modern, though. Yeah, 6 Day Stinker. Batman and Robin with a 3.8. Yeesh. Yeesh. Maggie. Aftermath. Yeah, definitely have not seen that. And then The Last Stand. (2013) have not seen it. 6.3 doesn't seem bad. Okay, all right. Now we can fine tune things a little bit here. Now we can fine tune things a little. All right. Predator T2 True Lies easy S tier. Nothing's getting lowered here. Yeah, we gotta bring Terminator up to the A tier. Gotta. Now that I'm seeing what is filling out the B tier and that what it deserves to be there. Yeah, I did not see Expendables 2 or 3. Yeah, the Terminator sequels were, post Terminator 2, they were trash. Am I giving Batman and Robin too much here? Because that movie, it's like, because it's campy, is there redeeming value there? I think that's the only reason I have it at C and not D. It's like, it made a joke. It was a complete merchandise, like, cash grab, and made a complete joke out of Batman superhero. Like it's almost like it's set back superhero movies, and kind of deserves to be in D. But I feel like if I'm gonna rewatch one of these, I'm choosing Batman and Robin easily over these guys. Easily, definitely over 6 Day. I don't know. Twins does have some redeeming value to it as well, and perhaps some rewatchability. Yeah, I'm happy with this list. I'm gonna save this. I'm gonna share this. I need let's save this, and then I want to give this to the team to see what they think. Let's download that. All right, we got our tier list. Let me share this in the Discord. If I share that link. Okay, here we go. Yeah, I'm gonna throw that in the general chat. My Arnold Schwarzenegger tier list. What's yours look like? All right, let's see. The thoughts. Yeah, okay. I feel like that this sort of thing can be pretty revealing. Creative tastes, revealed nostalgia from when you were born. I feel like I can stand by this list pretty confidently. The anything that is A tier and above is if it's on TV, I stop and I watch it. Last Action Hero might get there too. I think everything else on this list that I have seen, I would not. So I think Last Action Hero is the best of the Bs. And is probably the last movie that I would stop to watch if I saw that it was just, I'm never on cable anymore anyway. I don't know, like, but hypothetically, that's one of those ones that like Shawshank Redemption, The Matrix, that's a whole other discussion, is like what movies, if they're on, if you were to stumble on it, would you stop and watch it? Definitely makes the list. All right, there goes Schwarzenegger. The Jungle Book. Let's see, what were we getting to next here? Trouble, I'm sure. Football news. Uh-oh, the Giants. It is a rough day to be a New York football fan. The Jets and the Giants going through it. Gaming. Let's see what the news is, guys. And something I definitely want to talk to Chris and Carrot about when we get them in here is Ubisoft keeps stepping in dog shit. There's more and more news, unfortunate news coming from Ubisoft. And I feel like Carrot and Chris will have a very unique, very interesting, very pertinent perspective. And I won't spoil it, but I want to pull up all that stuff. Actually, I think I might still have the tabs open. Ooh, Metaphor ReFantasio, as Carrot was getting into this when we discussed in the last stream, has become the fastest selling Atlas game of all time. 1 million copies in a single day. Yo, that's awesome. I was just looking at this, talking about Ubisoft. How many copies of Star Wars Outlaws sold? Oh, total 1 million copies. Oh my gosh. Yo, what is it? Oh man, this is just so unbelievable. You write that down on paper, you say it out loud, and it's like, what? Putting out a demo really helped. Well, yeah. Hey, this is something, it's like I gotta write all these bullet points down. Metaphor ReFantasio. Benefits of releasing a demo. Okay, now it's my thought that you're really only going to get the benefits of releasing a demo. Great idea when your game is awesome. Okay. And we got to be honest, not every game by the time you're ready to release it is awesome. Sometimes it's just okay. Sometimes it stinks. There's potential downsides to releasing a demo when your game is great. It can, it's like, is playing the demo, sometimes people can feel like they've got enough of the gameplay that's like, okay, I've seen enough. I don't need to buy the game to experience more. If the game is good and the demo itself falls flat, if you, for whatever reason, picked a slice of the game that might not be the most exciting or create the best experience for the audience, if you release a demo and it's a shaky release, then everybody's like, oh, they lose hope for the main game, right? So there is some risk that goes along with releasing a demo. But it seems like Metaphor, ReFantasio, it got on my radar because Carrad really enjoyed the demo and he wanted to share with people. And so it's almost as if you're confident in a game's ability to... if you can create a demo that's going to elicit a strong positive reaction, then you've created a marketing engine, like something that is going to feed people and do a lot of the heavy lifting to get people to convert, to want to wish list, to want to buy, right? People are already making buying decisions coming out and picking up this game based on how impressive the demo is. Good job, Perona team. Perona, is that what they're called? Persona. Oh, he meant Persona. I joined, but I need a new GPU, so gonna have to wait. I'm glad after following Studio Zero staff for years, it's now widely recognized as peak. Now bring Catherine full in PC. Didn't a bunch of fanboys say the game wouldn't sell because Xbox had the advertising rights? I'm shocked that was conjecture. People have extreme confusion over the difference between I don't like that and nobody will like that. Yeah, this is Persona is about to take over the world. Might be what we're witnessing here, is that this could be the preamble for a Persona dominating. 1 million copies in a single day is nuts. That is crazy. When you have, oh my gosh, when you have Ubisoft, this moneyed, publicly traded super business, can't get one of the most valuable IPs in the world, can't sell 1 million copies. Oh my gosh. Just things are so upside down, It's like if I'm a fly on the wall in those stockholder meetings, or right, if I don't know how anybody could comment on the leadership at Ubisoft. I mean, I could go on and on. I want to wait till Carrad and Chris get in on the chat because I have a lot of thoughts on this, and I'd love to pick apart the past year, because when we see a game do so great, it's not the economy, it's not the cost of games, it's not players having unrealistic expectations, right? All this stuff, the whole Baldur's Gate effect, right? Where it's like, this game is such a masterpiece that it is a disadvantage to every other game. It's unrealistic to expect that every game is going to have hundreds and hundreds of hours of replayability, this much content and storytelling kind of layered and stacked and artfully put together. It was wild to see that short-term effect of Baldur's Gate, but it's like, people just want good games, and to see the AAA studios complain when other games are great, and someone comes from a great gaming experience and goes to your crappy gaming experience, they don't have unrealistic expectations of the game. They just want to have fun. And if your game isn't fun, if it isn't worth the money, then you're going to feel it. When a game is awesome and popping off, 1 million copies in a day, that's what it looks like. Okay. That's cool. Crash Bandicoot. I did see some pretty funny news earlier about Henry Cavill accepted Voltron. There it is. Henry Cavill to star in Voltron. Yo, what is going on here? They're making a Voltron movie. Henry Cavill. This, and sometimes the top Reddit comment is exactly what you would have put in there. My sentiment exactly. Henry Cavill will not stop until he's in every geeky IP. Yeah, this dude's just got his pick of the litter, right? Is he just going to studios? Was he the genesis of this the same way that he was for The Witcher? I wouldn't be surprised, man. This guy is just like, he's just unstoppable. Plot details for the new version is unclear. Thurber wrote the script with Ellen Shanman. Todd Lieberman with Hidden Pictures, World Events Productions, Bob Kopler. Okay. He's also executive producing a take on the Warhammer 40K franchise across all Amazon MGM Studios productions. It's super, super interesting. This guy is he's just living the nerd dream. King Nerd, Henry Cavill. That's pretty exciting. He proved with The Witcher that he is putting an emphasis on the creative, like, integrity and keeping things true to the source material, at least to a respectful degree, right? And ultimately, that's why he left The Witcher, right? Is that they wanted to deviate from that too much. We watched the trailer for this. I don't know what I'm looking at with Brothership here. Weirdly enough, this probably the newest game release I've been the most excited for in 2024. Really? Okay. Mario and Luigi conservatorship. What's a game that's unpopular that you liked? Oh yes, let's get in here. Devil May Cry 2. I'm a big DMC guy. I really liked Chorus, but hardly anyone bought it or even reviewed it. I don't even know what Chorus is. Frontlines, Fuels of War. Loved Evolve. I have Evolve. I am one of these guys. This is really funny. I even played again during the mini revival that happened. I wish this game stuck around longer. I was in love for the first couple months we played it. If you install the game and opt into the beta version on Steam, there's still servers and people playing it. So Evolve is a fun game. Let's see if we can pull up Evolve. Let's see, store page. So if you don't know Evolve is like an asymmetric, almost kind of like Dead by Daylight type game, but it's a shooter. So one player plays the monster and is like huge and super powered, like raid boss, right? Has a bunch of abilities and is trying to grow stronger and stronger and stronger during the course of the game. And then you end up having this big fight with the other controlled players that all have their own abilities, their own guns. And, I think it's 4. Is it 4 players on one? 3 or 4? I think it's 4. And 4v1. And so there's like a bunch of different monsters you can play. Turtle Rock Studios developed this guy. And I remember really, really enjoying Evolve. And also kind of feeling the same way. Is this was one of those games that I convinced a handful of other friends to get, and we all enjoyed it together for maybe like 2 months. And we walked away from it, and I don't think it was because of the lack of staying power or lack of interest in the game. There just weren't a lot of people playing it. I think it was actually really hard to find a game sometimes if you didn't have a full group. I'm curious as to what some of these games that like you enjoy, you like what is. So there were mixed reviews on the Steam page. Evolve, let's see, 76. Okay, that's not bad. The user score is super low. Okay, I liked it. I wish Evolve didn't have to die the way it did. Games like Dead by Daylight, Friday the 13th, and any other game used the 1v4 formula really owes a lot to Evolve, but it being a game that released for $60 and having over $200 worth of day one DLC content killed Evolve before it had a real chance to grow. That's very interesting, okay? And I think that will be a theme of our conversation with Kared and Chris, is how bad business decisions particularly in gaming can blow up a project, right? This is one guy's take. I don't know if this is the truth. Like, I'm pretty sure I remember it being $60. Did it have that much day one DLC? $200 worth of day one DLC? Failed to keep anyone interested in the long term. Obscene a la carte DLC practices. Yeah, all too common. But I think this kind of preceded a lot of best practices that we see now. Still a bunch of companies making that's the falling victim to the same pitfalls. Evolve is the evolution of Left 4 Dead. Left 4 Dead 2 is one of my favorite games ever. I love Left 4 Dead. I just had to get that out of my system. But anyways, hello, my fellow video game monster. B-Rod is here with another review. Okay, what do you got for us, B-Rod? Oh gosh, lengthy. Will Evolve be as beloved as Left 4 Dead? I doubt it. Oh man, just really, sometimes you see it here. Ghostwire Tokyo enjoyed Mass Effect Andromeda, right? This game got dumped on its release. The gameplay got a bit repetitive. You played it too much at a time. It was good the developers wanted to do more with the setting than they got to do, but it was an appealing setting, fun, exploratory RPG. Okay. Yeah, I think sometimes when we dump on games, time shines on it after a little while. I sort of agree with OP about Devil May Cry 2. Heroes of the Storm. It's the best MOBA I played, hands down. I enjoyed it for years before giving up on it. Wish it gained popularity and stayed strong. Still enough people are playing at it. If you suck at it like me, rank queues are only a couple of minutes. Yeah, I never played Heroes of the Storm. I'm really surprised. And I guess this kind of gets back into the conversation of like the 5v5 shooter that Karen and I were having on Wednesday. MOBAs. I think that ultimately, even if this game had a little bit more to offer than Dota or League of Legends, Dota was barely able to regain the MOBA foothold by offering a better product than League of Legends. Right? Dota was a mod and competed against League of Legends. League of Legends is like, hey, let's make our own, you know, standalone game that will have all these quality of life improvements. And then Steam, they redo Dota 2, and it is really a modern MOBA, the way League of Legends still isn't. It makes a lot of sense to me that your Heroes of New Earth and Heroes of the Storm, and there's a couple other MOBAs that tried to squeeze in there, and now Steam is finding a way to get creative with what is their beta one? Their first-person shooter MOBA? And Karen's giving me the nod here. I'm going to throw that link up for these guys so they can jump in whenever they're ready. Let's do the control room here. And we will invite our guests, and then we'll get them in the chat. Let's see. And then I can pull up my conversation points that I had here. Sweet. Okay. So yeah, the discussions of like what does it mean for a genre to be saturated in the gaming space? How good does a game have to be to leverage a fan base away from one game and into the other? And is there any sense that people have about how they can quantify the total size of a fan base for a genre? And it's like, I don't know if you'd call it like stickiness, like its willingness to stay with one game, its willingness to experiment with new games within the genre. I think all that is super, super interesting to me, being on the business side of gaming. I legitimately love Spore and still go back to play it sometimes. Spore, what a game changer. People hate Spore. I do remember it getting dumped on. The developer promised a lot of features and some mechanics that were just never implemented. Kind of the same like No Man's Sky. Like it was presented in a way like it was supposed to be this unbelievable, huge, broad experience that just never delivered on those promises. But still really fun to play. Only to wind up being sorely disappointed by how shallow each of the levels were. Ultimately, I think this was the case. And yeah, again, kind of echoing No Man's Sky vibes. There was no underwater gameplay like we were promised. All the darker elements were ripped out in favor of making it more kid-friendly. It wasn't an awful game, but it was definitely disappointing. Yeah, I think that kind of nails it. This very limited gameplay loop that was just not interesting. Brink, okay. Yeah, the people going back to DMC. Oh, the Battlefront games, yes. Ooh, Assassin's Creed. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about that real quick. All right, guys, before Karen and Chris join me, I'm going to step aside for 1 second, use the restroom real quick, and we will be right back with both of our guests. Don't go anywhere. I'll be right back. We are back here. I just have my mic muted. And Chris, you're muted. Let me just pull you in here and we'll get you set up. Be guest number 1. What else? Boom, there we go. Chris, can you hear me? No, you can't hear me, Chris? Mute the speaker. Can you? Hey, Chris, can you hear me? It doesn't seem like he can. Let me... Got the virtual camera set up here. I'm gonna check my... Ooh, no audio sources.
Hello.
Hey, can you hear me? I can hear you.
That's so funny. I can read your lips, so I saw that you could hear me.
Oh, and I feel like I'm hearing you twice here. Hold on.
Oh, well, now it's going through my computer and not the mic. Sorry, troubleshooting. All right. Yeah.
I can hear you, and I think I can hear you twice. I'm gonna see if I can.
I set up my settings to be going through exactly what I'm working with on screen, but hilariously, it's still going through the computer, which means maybe... Hold on, speak again?
Can you hear me now?
Oh my goodness, figured it out. Apparently, no matter what the settings are in this Ninja thing, I need to set the computer settings overall as well. Learning. Success. Thank you, Alex, for your patience.
We're all learning here. We're all learning together. And I think I had this kind of echoey sound too for Carrot yesterday. And I don't know if it's
happening?
It is happening right now, where it just feels like there's 2 audio sources like layered on top of each other.
I wonder if it is still going through my computer as well as a separate source.
Well, since you sound this way, it sounds similar to what we had with Carrot yesterday, but I don't know if this is hitting the stream the same.
It's a good question.
Deadlock, yes, Carrot was listening. Yes, Deadlock is the game that I was talking
about. Oh, Deadlock.
I was
Have you actually messed with it yet?
I have. I've played 2 games of Deadlock.
Oh my god, you're one of the cool people.
Am I? You want an invite?
I mean, the answer is my soul does, for sure. I also know that if I got back into it's a Steam PC shooter still at this point, right? Yeah,
Yep.
I would go down a rabbit hole. In a very funny way, even though we're making a game for PC and computers, it is comical how outside of my Paradox Grand Strategy style games or like Total War games, I avoid playing on my computer because it's the workspace and it's just weird for my brain.
Mm-hmm.
And Deadlock is the kind of shooter that, I played so much Counter-Strike in dorms in high school.
Yep.
That I know it would suck my life. That's why I've never played a MMO. I am amazed by a lot of them out there. I am so impressed by the design behind them and how much content. I know I would love the online Final Fantasy, and yet I also know I would lose my life. So it's that weird personal balance thing.
Yeah, I think I'm reminded when I see like Diablo 4 just had its DLC come out.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Like the last MMO I got into was Diablo 2. And
I appreciate that you just called it an MMO. Because I had only dial-up at the time, so I only did LAN. But Diablo 2 is the game, no joke, that I've probably, it's so weird to think about, hours in my life, probably the most hours I've ever put in a game.
Yeah, and it's one of those things I cannot afford to fall into that pit.
Exactly. No, that's my whole thing with a lot of those genres. I understand my habits, I know my taste, maybe to a fault, and I know myself. I have enough addictions already. I don't need to add the more intense, brutal one.
Carrot, how we doing?
Hey, Carrot. Ooh, hi, Carrot.
Hi, Carrot. Can you hear us?
I wonder if he's got the same thing going on. That'd be so funny.
Yeah, good. I can't hear you.
Had a feeling. I'm gonna put what I had to do in chat to him. Try changing your computer audio to your headphones, not just, as I monologue for everyone at home listening, not just in the app. That was bad typing. Love my Bluetooth keyboard and how I can't hit keys correctly. How the sausage is made. So yeah, to those watching, welcome to my cave that I do all my recording work in my acting job for. It's my safe space. It's my safe space. My little cave.
It's lovely.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that, Alex. It's for better or worse, my 4x4 little hole here is home.
Where the magic is made.
Yeah, where some kind of sausage, some absurd sausage, is created day in and day out.
Some absurd sausage. The next title from GSG.
You know what? The unofficial sequel to Untitled Goose Game. I'd go with that.
How do we feel, Karen? Can you hear us? I know he listened through the stream for a minute before we could get him figured out.
Fair.
So many settings here.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's crazy because the settings in this app, like I said before, no matter what I had set them to, I couldn't hear you.
Oh, we lost him.
Yeah, I think he's gonna potentially go to the stream itself and hear us talk to him. I have a feeling.
Try inviting. Copy the link again. Audio sources back.
Audio. Yeah.
You have us now, Carrot, maybe?
Second time's the charm. Debatable.
Hello?
Yes!
Hi, yes.
Hey, I can hear you now. All right, cool.
Was it my stupid suggestion?
No, it was because I was getting input and output confused. So,
All right, fair enough.
yeah, that's my bad.
So my question to you, Chris, how do we sound to you? Does it sound like one, are you not getting this echoey vibe? I think it might just be me in the stream position that I'm hearing a slight echo, but if you guys aren't hearing anything, then that's probably a good thing.
I hear nothing. Kara, do you hear me in an echo?
I don't hear you in an echo here. I heard you in an echo on the stream.
Interesting.
Okay. So there's some.
The question is, am I an echo on the stream?
Yes. I mean, if he's echoey, you're very echoey. So there is something here.
Oh, I am. I just checked.
Yeah.
On stream, that's the delay.
So there's something here that we need to play with.
Yeah, let me know if there's anything I need to do on my end.
Sweet.
Well, as I'm gonna tinker with this, but I'm gonna throw some a little bit. I have some fodder here for discussion. Cool. Okay. And this can go in so many different directions. But I was just looking at Ubisoft's No Good, Very Bad Year.
In which way? Are we just talking about releases?
In every way feasible. Right? Just looking at their last year, from Skull and Bones being a quadruple A game, and having like 300 people playing it right now.
And how many? What? And how long was that dev cycle since Black Flag? It's almost been a decade, right? I mean,
Yeah,
it's
it's
something
like
insane
10
like
years
that.
development.
7 to 9 years, something absurd like that.
The CEO called it a quadruple A game. It proceeded to eat shit.
Yeah.
They promoted their influencer campaign for that game had to be like $200,000, $300,000, maybe even more. It was massive. The spend.
It's nuts.
And they, yeah, people just hanging out as pirates. Average gameplay didn't motivate a lot of sales. And then the CEO calling it, like building it up, that this is going to be like this game changer. The way we talk about games, quadruple A game.
So the development time for that was 11 years, right? And at some point,
You're in the pocket for that development, and it's like, from my perspective, it's like it's always kind of like it has existed for so long. Like there are people who have probably joined Ubisoft and been promoted up to leadership, and throughout that process, Skull and Bones has always just been a thing and been hyped up internally as like, oh, when this is out, and even if it's just plagued with problems. Like, because I don't really think that like anyone would say like a pirate game like that it has any right to be quadruple A. I guess like in the sense that like you look at Sea of Thieves, you see that market share of Sea of Thieves, and Sea of Thieves is doing great, and Black Flag was great because of how far it exceeded expectations. But yeah, I think it was just like one of those things where they just got stuck in a hole and they were just like, we got to get it out. And I think the CEO is just hyping it up to try to squeeze as many sales as they can out of a lost cause.
Yeah, it to me, it's also compounded by the fact that Ubisoft's biggest hits, going back to a conversation I know you and I have had carried separately from this in the past, but you go back to some of their mega successes that weren't just single player games, mostly just being the factory of Assassin's Creed. And you go to the early PS4 titles of Rainbow Six Siege, which still has a huge following, For Honor. And both of those games, when they launched, were these stalwarts of this new style of free-to-play or free-to-play adjacent. You might buy the game, but then there's going to be constant content. And with that, both of them, at least I think pretty sure both of them, and definitely Siege, were these very interesting almost tests of their launches. For Honor was pretty solid and Siege was solid, but they weren't amazing. But they kept growing. And then Siege especially became its own beast that just kept becoming a thing. And that I played a lot of Siege early on and then got wacky as heck when it just suddenly had 1,000 different operators. And I was like, okay, I don't know what the meta is anymore. I'm lost. But it's kind of like the Overwatch thing a little bit. But for a while, they had this model of games can come out. Oh, and the other one I'd forgotten about was The Division. Different style of this kind of multiplayer thing. So not identical in its ethos, but the philosophy of how they were building around it was very similar. And all of them grew. And even if they started bad, they had the time and the legs to make them great. I mean, I didn't play some of them, so I can't really say, oh, great. I just mean in the sense of, from I think, a corporate perspective. And I think, to your point, 11 years ago is when that development started. That was that era, literally, when those games came out. So the concept behind Black Flag, I also think about like when Sony, the biggest heartbreak for me of this generation is Sony canceling the Last of Us Part 2 multiplayer, because I was one of the devotees of the original multiplayer in that game. Played a shocking amount of hours in that game. Wasn't perfect, but there's nothing like the feeling of that sneaking around trying to kill each other, like the Last of Us multiplayer. And they canceled it because they were like, oh, we don't know how to make this an ongoing platform like a Helldivers kind of thing eventually coming out this year. But it's that thing of like, but no one really wanted that. That's just how you wanted to monetize it, by spinning it out. If you had just done the multiplayer suite, it would have been another probably way, because the controls of the second game are more advanced by being able to lie flat and stuff like that. You just could have had a really awesome multiplayer suite. You didn't need to go crazy with it, but we had a trend for a decade of chasing that. And as we've seen with Concord and Helldivers, it's not a question of let's have 4 at once. It's clearly more a question of You probably can only support 1 or 2, and then you're just eating your own lunch, and you're not really helping yourself. And Black Flag, to your point, Carrot, I think was made even more irrelevant because Sea of Thieves kind of was a dud originally, overall, but it was allowed to keep growing and build a giant thing. So then inherently, if you're doing a pirate space, it's like, yeah, but there's already a pirate game that's years down the road.
Mhm.
So either figure your stuff out or why would we be there? And the main idea was that Black Flag, it was the arcadey combat. But that's fun in small bursts. Is it really going to be great if that's everything? And it seems like, again, gotta be fair, haven't played it. But it's a fascinating look at, to your point, Carrot, of what is the mindset, how long it stays, probably sunk cost fallacy. It's one of the few talking points they had for years because fans loved Black Flag so much. It's kind of this interesting outlier in that series. And everyone always talked about the sailing and whatnot.
Mhm.
So I think they did a little too much of the, people like that, let's make it a full game. And then it just was years of, well, how? It's combat that's over in 5 minutes. It's not we're not playing a simulation like an Age of Sail, where you're truly doing like, oh, my ship of the line has only this kind of turning radius, and I need to make sure I have a full broadside because it's going to take forever to reload. That's not what they're going for. They're going arcadey, so that's also going to be short battles. So it felt like they were trying to build more of like a, here's your fleet, build a quick match, but they're trying to make it a platform game. It's just. I mean, we've seen it so much with how depressing these last few years have been with cancellations and studio axings and all the rest of it. I mean, how much corporate push for certain genres across studios at different companies have led to people being like, we have to, cancel everything because this is a disaster. And it's like, sounds like no one wanted to make this game. It sounds like 3 people went, big number signs that can generate from this, and that's about it.
Right, well, that tends to be a trend here. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Great. Okay, because I did tweak something and the issue is fixed. I hope it's fixed on the awesome. I hope it's fixed completely on the stream side as well. Yes, fixed. I think the when I see all these errors by Ubisoft made in a row, it makes me think about like what is coming first. Like, are they like, hey, here's a monetization model we'd like to experiment with? What game would fit that monetization model, right? Are they developing these games completely backwards, right? That's like, okay, we want a live service game that we can charge seasonal DLC for, that we can count on 1 million users, and $60 every 3 months. Okay, pirates, right? Is this what we're doing now, right? Because we see we see what they did with Skull and Bones. We see how they put up Assassin's Creed Shadows, and everything's got this like Star Wars Outlaws. All these games have like day one DLC, $129 premium edition, and it's the cost aside. Expensive games, great. If the game is great, I'd pay $130 for a killer game. I would. But let's take not even a complete game and dissect it. You only get 60% as the base game, and the rest of it's behind a paywall. All of it just feels so gross.
Yep. And
then Ubisoft is reportedly planning to release 10 Assassin's Creed games in 5 years.
So, I mean, clearly it's the only brand that I feel comfortable about now, which is depressing beyond belief. By the way, I don't know what the final numbers were on it, and I'm not just trying to be devil's advocate entirely, but weirdly, amidst this year, they had one mega secret hit that happened at the beginning of the year that early on everyone was like, this might be Game of the Year, which was their 2.5D Metroidvania, Prince of Persia.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, their new Prince of Persia, like platformer.
I finally have a copy of it because I am still one of the only 10 people that buys everything on disc. But that's so I waited for a copy on disc kind of thing. But point being, it's like that was how they started this year with amazing press. So I'm trying to actually strengthen your point on how bad this year's gone. It's like literally, I think that was January or November.
Yeah, and we're not even.
And it started, and everyone's like, this is. Wow, they're finally doing the thing we wanted them to do for forever, and they did a great job. And it's inherently Definitely one of the best Metroidvanias, especially in terms of quality of life choices that everyone's
Yes.
like, well, you have to do this now, otherwise inherently you're making a bad game because they've broken that seal with the maps and identification of icons and whatnot. It's like, that's amazing. And then everything else happens.
First big W that I can remember for like the Ubisoft store, right? That it's like bringing people into their ecosystem.
Yeah.
Of a game that's just great, classic genre, competing with like Blasphemous 2 and this mini resurgence of Metroidvanias.
And all the Konami re-release collections now.
an homage to Prince of Persia, and we've had a series of stinkers of Prince of Persia titles. So like, yes, they kind of burned through all the goodwill they earned with Prince of Persia.
Yep.
The pulled.
The cell shaded one was actually more solid than people give it credit for.
I think that some redeeming qualities, but mostly on the wrong side of things.
I agree. By the way, I agree. It's just that is one of those. It's like that funny thing of we were alive for it, all of us, I'm pretty sure. But like the old Wind Waker debacle when it was cell shaded, and everyone's like, "This game is a child's game. It sucks." I know people know about this on the internet if they're young because it was a famous thing. But as someone who was not a Nintendo person growing up, but played them at friends' houses, I always would be like, "Can we play that Wind Waker game? It looks awesome." I felt like such an idiot. Bought a GameCube in college, used at a GameStop just to play that game. But man, it's the same. To me, it was the same argument to an extent, where they were like, "It's not our Prince." It's like, yeah, but it's still a solid game. Not amazing. The original Prince, Sands of Time, still the best, I think. Even if the combat's really sloppy overall, it had the perfect time of actually being in the game. It didn't overstay its welcome, and voice acting was good enough, especially in an era where we still were real hit or miss with voice performances. So it also stood in everyone's mind. It's like the original Metal Gear Solid. I adore that game. It means a lot to me. It's actually part of why I wanted to get into acting. I was like, holy shit, they actually hired people to do this stuff. But it also stood out because no one else was good at that thing. So it's like Sands of Time also had that effect. And yeah, you're right. They finally did right by the franchise after years of missteps.
Mm-hmm.
And it sold well, it seems like.
Yeah, I was looking at
I have no idea.
I was just looking at numbers because ReFantasio sold 1 million copies in a day,
which is awesome because people were scared not having the Persona name on it.
And then apparently Star Wars Outlaws only sold 1 million in total.
Yep.
In the first month, right?
Yep.
Star Wars Outlaws.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like,
that's what you're talking about, Alex. What is your track record recently?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, how mid does a game have to be? AAA studio.
Yeah.
One of the richest, most valuable IPs ever.
Yep.
The most fervent fan base. How middling does your game have to be for you to be outsold in a single day? Like, oh my gosh.
What used to be the plucky small studio when they were making their PS2 Personas, yeah.
Right, and we're not too far from Personas being like
super niche.
A hyper niche and like a joke almost within the industry.
I got lucky picking up Persona 3 FES on PS2 because when Virgin Megastore was going out of business in New York City, they had like 1,000 copies for $5, and I was like, oh, this GameSpot gave this RPG of the year? I've never heard of this. And just played it my freshman year of college.
Yeah.
Years into the PS3 already existing. It wasn't like this game came out on PS2 years after there was a PS3, at least in the States. Because how long the translation took. And it's like, this game was rad.
On the gaming subreddit, someone mentioned the value of the demo being a main driver, right? So Kara, you mentioned it. That's the only reason it got in front of me. And like a game that you might not have thought to spring for, people are being really impressed by the demo. We seem to be in an era like the demo is something we look back on as like, remember when the Sony PlayStation came with the demo disc and it had these games on it. And oh man, I got to play Virtua Fighter.
The official magazine, because it came with a CD. CD would tell you of the things coming out that year.
Yes, it
100%.
it would have a fighting game. You could only select 2 of the characters and play on one of the maps.
And one map, and it would be a 1 minute round. Can't mess with the clock. Go.
One racing game in one car on one map, and you'd get all these little bite-sized versions of games, and it's like it's super rare.
With games like for me, I remember a friend of mine buying Zone of the Enders just so that we could play the tanker demo. I think it was Zone of the Enders. I was pretty sure it was in Zone of the Enders. It was one of the two.
It's so funny how that was like the norm.
Yes.
Of like demos being released was like, okay, it seemed like most games had a demo out in the ecosystem, right? And now it's so rare, it seems, that it's like everybody wants to consolidate the exposure of their game to a singular week, a singular effort. Is it? Do you think it's out of fear? It seems like could be a huge learning opportunity for games to leverage success via demos.
I think there have been a lot of. I think the reason why we're seeing more and more demos is basically what you two just said, is that there are enough. It's not just isolated cases at this point of games giving you a demo. And a lot of them, at least for me, that have popped in the last 3 or 4 years, they've been specifically by Japanese developers. It's been a lot of Capcom demos, specifically in my book. A lot of the Resident Evil games. And
we got Final Fantasy demo too, right?
Yeah.
Like we got.
That's the other one I was going to go for.
Yeah.
That there are big enough chunks of a game to actually, even more so than old demos. Old demos in my head were real short. They were real just like, here's a taste, because you would get basically a sampler disc in a magazine, or you would get games, especially if it was like a Sony first party game, it would probably come on that DVD, because that's the kind of disc it was, and that was such a huge deal for space and how much extra space. To maximize that, you would always have like a making of documentary. I mean, all those old God of War discs have a documentary. I mean, you can see young Nat Jaffe and others being like, yeah, we sleep under our desk. We're so dedicated. And you're like, oh, watching those now. It's very funny watching those docs, especially because it was all about like, we're hardcore. It's like, yeah, the thing that humans are trying to stop. But beyond that, you just had so much space. So they would cram extra stuff in. Oh, we want to make sure that you actually want to play. With PS1 discs, it was like, there's so much content. And it was also with discs in that era, the highest volume of production, because unlike making carts for Nintendo, it was so easy to put games on a disc.
Yeah.
A lot of why the PS1 proliferated the way it did, and then PS2 as well. But for some reason they were all shorter. And now, especially with how big a lot of these games are, they're clearly weighing if we let you play half an hour, that's not enough of the game for you to feel like you played the whole game. But it's enough for you to get the atmosphere and the feel of what we're trying to sell. And as long as that jives with you in any way, you're hooked. Because kind of like what we're saying with the Ubisoft stuff, we are currently in a world where, especially when you look at open world, it is the Far Cry Ubisoft model, used by almost everyone with tweaks. Now, half of what made Horizon stand out to a lot of people was maybe not to your taste, but a really well-written, at least dramaturgically, a hard sci-fi story. You can comment on the stupid costumes and the whatnot and a lot of things that bother people. You're not exactly wrong there, but it actually was a intriguing, well-thought-out piece of science fiction. Has its flaws, no doubt about it, but overall, that was pretty, not new, but it shocked people with how solid it was. And they did the Ubisoft formula, at least in the first one. Second game, I think, is too big, and it gets a little too much into the Ubisoft problem. But they did the Ubisoft formula of your towers, your this, your that. But it was always like 4 of everything, or not too much of it. So by the time you're like, okay, I've done 8 outposts, I'm tired. It's like, well, that was kind of all the outposts. So even though you're now exhausted, you don't have to worry about that anymore. There's only 4 or 5 of the tall necks, and those are a fun little mini puzzle, like climbing a tower in an Assassin's Creed thing. and you're like, cool, I figured out this little puzzle, I got a whole new zone, move on. But the second you really have your, here's 1,000 icons on the map, and Ghostwire Tokyo was a hard one for me in that way, where I really liked a lot of what they were trying in that game. Story clearly was written in a week. I'm over exaggerating, but it felt like it was written in a month. And knowing the story of how that game was developed, they absolutely ripped out the story and kind of redid it at the last second to be like, reasons. But because the director left like half a year before it, or a year before it was released, they changed everything. The woman that they had brought out on stage at E3 and been like, she's directing it, and then she left. But it's that weird thing of too many games are like, but we need to give you content, going back to what you said, Alex, like, and if we just throw stuff at you, that's cool, right? It's like, yeah, but it's so funny because it's like, it's not so long ago we were all talking about The Witcher 3 being magnificent, not because all of its gameplay was actually that good, but because its quests and its content respected you and your time and actually gave you a little more nuance and payoff. That was the biggest disappointment for me about Cyberpunk, is that the writing was not on the same par overall. But when you did get those moments, you were like, they're still trying at least. Even if they're failing a lot more in this game, they're trying to honor your time. And I think that we just have so much game design right now that is more about how do we keep your time and keep you addicted or keep you stuck, rather than how do we actually respect your time and make you enjoy it. I mean, it's a little bit of a get on the soapbox comment, I'm sorry, but it's just more of a philosophy of going back to how do we just extricate dollars versus a let's make something memorable. And to shame someone else a little bit, it's like, I just mentioned Horizon, and what's the next game Guerrilla's doing? A multiplayer platform Horizon. It's like, who's asking for that? That series is, it's a first-person hard sci-fi thing where you're going through this weird world.
Yeah, just give her
making like a monster.
No, give us time splitters. Like let's.
Oh my god.
Let's. There's so many like
time I play the new
dead
games,
IP.
Like, someone, the old shooters. Thank you.
There's a whole bunch of dead IP that people have been asking for, and then there's just the stuff we're being force fed.
Yep.
And it's hard. It's like Ubisoft, publicly traded, like, of course they're making that decision. Of course they're just like, okay, money machine.
Yeah.
Let's go back to the golden goose. It's their FIFA, it's their Madden, right? And it's just new. Okay, it's like the dartboard. Okay, what era are we in this time?
Like, I know that they're trying to buy with Tencent. They're trying to buy back a lot of stock to potentially take themselves off the stock market and go private.
Go back to private ownership,
which means they don't have to chase growth, which maybe you can develop more. Which by the way,
it's
good.
It's the enemy. It's the enemy of creative work, right? I think we circle this back to the bigger picture with GSG, right? As like Carrot. This is what is ultimately just this hyper appealing thing to me, as like small indie private ownership, like creatives making decisions from start to finish throughout the development process of our projects. That it's like how much like the idea of being buried in the red tape or being a quote unquote creative stuck at one of these giant corporations trying to make a passion project and then being hindered and redirected, scrapped. No, it has to meet all this criteria. Do you see what's happening at companies like Ubisoft, and does that inform decisions that you make in real time at GSG?
Look, I think the thing that's happening at Ubisoft is kind of like, it's an apex of two separate industry issues. The first one is that AAA gaming is too expensive. So like selling $1 million in the first month, even though like Star Wars like Outlaws, it's a pretty fun game. It's not like an incredible game that's worth spending like $150 on the deluxe.
It's fine. It's fine.
It's fine.
My favorite phrase: aggressively mediocre.
But that's the thing. It's even then, like it's like there are some moments of it which are like there are some really talented people on that team, and it shines through. The game could have been half as big, it could have been half as long, and it could have kept the same gameplay and mechanics, and it could have been a $60 game, and it would have made its money back with that, if not the long tail. But AAA gaming is like, it's just getting big because it's just trying to meet the expectation of each other. People look at like at things like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and they're like, "Oh, we got to kind of meet that expectation," even though that was incredibly expensive and is still underperforming from the perspective of the company that released it. So there's that, and then there's also the chase for live service and the chase for like the money printer. And like we spoke on Wednesday about how like the best live service games are the ones where live service is like it thematically complements a live service nature, and whenever something thematically doesn't complement live service nature, like killing a Justice League or being in an Avenger and not having any PvP, it just kind of like stops making sense in that way, right? But I think with like GSG, for us, our kind of strategy right now is to kind of lean into this this indie scene, which even though the industry is having a tough time, the indie scene's still fairly thriving because of marketplaces like Steam and platforms like PlayStation, Xbox opening themselves up to more indie developers.
Yeah,
we can find an audience and we can find players, and because the cost of games are significantly lower than these massive inflated AAA budgets, we only need to get a magnitude of like a magnitude less of sales to break even or to benefit, right? And I think that we're starting to see these biggest successes, like the Prince of Persia game earlier this year, is that by giving these creators and these game makers the space and enough budget to be able to create something that is within scope.
I'm sure that was a lot cheaper to make.
Exactly, right? Within that double A, right? That indie to double A area, right? It's funny, right? I think the time economy of the average person, it has become such a bigger conversation and such a bigger deal than it was 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. One thing that always kind of sticks out to me is that like when Netflix, the CEO of Netflix was like, "Oh, you're competing with," like someone asked him a question like, "You competing with like Max? You competing with Hulu?" And he was like, "No, I'm competing with Fortnite. I'm like competing with like
all the other things you could spend your time on.
All the other things you can spend your time on, right?" And especially now that like time is now becoming the most expensive asset. It's like this idea of like getting the most bang for your buck and being able to play it out. Like I can see why like AAA games like we need if we're gonna have an hour of gameplay, that needs to be the most quality hour of gameplay ever. But then when you kind of throw in things like what Chris was saying before, where it's like, here's a bunch of things that exist just so you have things to do, is not as effective as like we respect your time, and here is something that like that you're committing an hour to this quest and you're going to get the nuance, you're going to get the payoff that you did in Witcher 3, right?
Which is what makes that most recent Final Fantasy so interesting, because it seems like to hardcore fans, they were like, cool, there's more things to do in this world.
Yeah.
And to people who are not hardcore fans, they were like, I don't care about any of this extra stuff. It doesn't. It's useless to me. It's literally useless.
It's very interesting to me to see where games fall on that spectrum of like, we appreciate the volume of things to do, right? And how they do it very differently. Because I would also put on games that do it incredibly well, you put like your Breath of the Wild, where it's like everyone appreciates pretty much everything there, whether or not you're going to try to do all the Korok seeds. Everyone kind of enjoys that level of like, ooh, there's a little puzzle I can solve if I feel like I want to do it. And
that it's a puzzle, because then the act of doing it is also is the joy rather than just what's my payoff.
Right. So you can look at like The Witcher, Baldur's Gate, right, where it's just this incredible amount of volume where it's like you can F off to a side of the map where you don't have anything going on and enjoy just getting lost in whatever layers they've laid out there.
Yep.
And like the nuance that is required to make that accepted by the player base as like value versus just see, we have all this potential gameplay here, appreciate it now, you know. And it's just you know, there's a lot of games that throw content out as if you know, kind of let them eat cake type approach. And it's weird to, I can't put my finger on why it works in some games and not in others, and how Nintendo, especially with Zelda, can do it so consistently. They know how many temples to put in every game. They know how to like
they have a formula that's tried and true for close to 30 years at this point.
The economy of time. They have their finger on the pulse when it comes to the economy of time.
But like, I got it. There was a time, there was an article written around Breath of the Wild, and I don't remember who it was years ago, but someone kind of went into a little bit of this logic as well. And it was during that an era where people were making the point of like, especially the early Dark Souls games were basically just Zelda games in template, except they're way harder in their combat and they don't say anything to you. And that's actually, especially Dark Souls 1, very true. You have to do early dungeons to get the Lord Vessel, which is like getting your 3 stones as a kid in Ocarina of Time, and then you become an adult, and now you've unlocked the orange doors to the bigger temples that you were locked out of because you weren't a better level yet. And it very much is, in many ways, a Zelda template. And the Zelda template, outside of when they now go back to 2D, and then they're using their 2D template, which was its own thing, they are doing the same formula. It's just literally the how you get there that keeps changing. But that's, as someone who's been acting most of my life, went to a conservatory for performance, did a lot of Shakespeare and classical work especially, also because when you're in small companies just out of college, you can get those plays for free. But point being, I have seen and been in almost every Shakespeare play, and especially the been in part, and multiple times. And the amount of people who will show up to the same show that they know the story to, time and time again, because they are interested in someone else's personal perspective and experience of that story and how it might affect them. No one's going to R&J unless they're 6 years old going, I wonder how this ends. Everyone effing knows. That's kind of the point. It's about the journey. It's about the emotional journey the actors and the whole production takes you on. And I've always had that feeling with a lot of video games too. It's why, even though it can sometimes be very not sometimes, it is often extremely up its own ass, it's why Kojima has a weird space in so many of our hearts. I adore Metal Gear Solid 2. A lot of that ending, even as a kid, I laughed at, but it didn't not, even as a kid, it did not make sense to me. I was like, I get what he's doing. He's talking about all the fears of new technology, even if doing it in a kind of haphazard, goofy way. But then again, as a lot of people always like to say, it's like, but he was kind of right. It's like, kind of. It's not like he was that big of a swing. Let's
full Kojima.
Credit. Exactly. But there is that element of like, that game, it's funny that I chose that one because that game actively chose to disrespect its audience, which is its own kind of crazy thing that I'll always love, even though I remember everyone hating it so much for it. Raiden. Metal Gear? Can't be. God, David Hayter, love your voice. But, side note, David Hayter, screenwriter who wrote X-Men 2. And then he was also Solid Snake.
Wow, what a career.
Yeah, right. He wrote like 3 movies that, and the biggest one I think was X2, and there's something else. But yeah, and it's like, and he was Snake for forever. But it's to me, there's always that weird thing of, and the reason why I chose Metal Gear is that quite literally the point of that second game is that you are almost moment to moment doing the first game. It's supposed to be the simulation and training to be blah, blah, blah. Take away that. The whole point is so many games are the exact same game again with only slight iterative changes. It becomes the how I go through it and what's the story that's changing. Very often we're using, and I'm going to pretend to be the game dev that I'm learning to be and use the term verbs. We're often using the same damn verbs in almost everything. It's about how we put them together to make something a little bit different or slightly different. And that's the name of the game. So it's so interesting when we're talking about the Ubisoft formula and all the rest of it, is that part of why that's not changing and why they keep doing it is that familiarity is very comfortable. But you have to then also respect your audience and make a thing. And I think you've mentioned a couple games with Baldur's Gate especially, and in my head, a big one for me is also Hades, and they're also both great examples because they were early access games. But those are two games that the core thing they're trying to accomplish, they effing nail it. And then on top of that, there is just layers and layers and layers of extra stuff and depth. Now, again, both cases, companies that have done very well enough independently that they were allowed to have the runway. They earned that on their own. So it's not a thing that everybody can just copy and paste and do. It's just it's unique. However, inherently with what Hades accomplished as one of the most story dense and incredible roguelites for that reason, and then again with Baldur's Gate and how many options and choices and interactions because of how much time they could spend on that Act 1 to then build the template for the rest of the game of everyone you're interacting with and how and what's your alignment and how do you want to play this? Are you going to do combat? Are you not? It's very interesting because to me, Alex, I'm at a point in my life where I now stare at a screen to create a game that we're doing a GSG. And then when it comes to my free time, unless there is a stalwart title that's really grabbing me right now kind of thing, or a Balatro, which is a fun little addiction to have on the side. But I would argue that's in the same category because it's a brilliant little piece of design, but for how simple it, totally.
Balatro doesn't count. Balatro doesn't, I'm addicted to, it doesn't count.
It's amazing, but it doesn't have the story, so it's this weird anomaly thing. But UFO 50, another example. I love that game. I can't wait till it's on console. I'm playing it on my Steam Deck. And I love Derek Yu. I was a huge Spelunky fan, and I remember when this thing was announced almost a decade ago. So I'm so glad it's out, and it's such a fun little thing. Everyone should try it. It's very cool. But point is, there's this weird nexus for me of, as someone who collects games, collects old systems, plays a lot of my old games, and have played almost my, let's say 70% of what I have in my library, which is a stupid amount of things in boxes right now. But I'm not seeing anything new and exciting often. It's like I tried Ghostwire Tokyo and liked a lot of it because the gameplay was a new thing. But there was nothing, and that was my pull for a game like that. But unless you are nailing it, I'm at a point in my life where I'm like, I have on my shelf somewhere 10 better versions of this. Or in a box in my storage, in the closet kind of thing. And so I've started going to a lot more board game design and solitaire board game stuff. Because even if the ending gameplay ends up being way simpler, there's also a forced interaction for me as someone who you basically have to be the computer to make sure all the rules are done right. And that inherent level of actually needing to be focused requires so much more out of you to just play the game that even if it's just, let's say, a 7 out of 10 experience overall, it feels more like a 9 out of 10 because you invest yourself into it. Since games are inherently passive in the sense of the computer making so many decisions behind the screen for you, it has to be amazing to keep. Not amazing is, I'm using an extreme adjective, but I think you guys know what I mean. That idea of like, you really need to be doing something to keep me involved because there's just too much out there right now that can compete.
I think two things that I want to touch on. The how like early access, as you mentioned, Chris, maybe that is something that is sort of cannibalized the idea of like needing to put a demo out there, right? Is like we're so many games, right? So it kind of, why would you have a demo if you're going the early access path? And then oftentimes I'm brought back to Japanese game design when I think about games that sort of like the game itself, you might rank at a 7 or a 6, but you end up having this much greater appreciation for the game because it's so different. things like Katamari
I was
Damacy.
about to say the PS2 era defines
yeah.
what you're talking about.
Oh man, Jet Set Radio, Future, right? Like all these like Japanese.
Mr. Mosquito, which they actually had an Astrobot for, and it made me so happy. It's one of the weirdest games ever.
And it's like games that like really like paradigm shift. Even though if you break the game down itself, it might be middling, 7 maybe, but it was just so different. Right, that it's just like you felt like it had that replayability, revisit, or it holds this like really important place in video game history. Yeah, and it that still seems to be the trend. It was that, especially now with like the JRPGs, your Personas.
Genre that was dead during the Xbox 360, PS3, and it wasn't. There were plenty of games being made in Japan. They were just none of them getting localized. But like it was until Ni no Kuni, that was the whole sell of that game. We're finally getting a big JRPG for the first time on PS3 this generation.
But every expo has like 50 JRPGs, and it's like a golden age. It's not like it doesn't seem to. It has like a limitless saturation point. And there's great stuff coming out of the genre. It just, I think I agree with you. It felt like at some point during the console wars that it had just kind of dried up, and I wasn't sure we were going to see it come back, but here we are.
And to kind of and to bringing up the demo / logic of early access, the amount of people in my life who aren't, let's say, the most hardcore gamers, the people that usually buy only 3-4 games a year maximum. And one of them is a Helldivers or a Call of Duty to be the permanent multiplayer game in the background, which is most of the people I know outside of a group of very hardcore, most of them in actual game dev kind of thing. But there's an interesting thing for those individuals who we all grew up playing video games together. One of them is a cousin of mine, and yeah, we grew up with big history nerds, so a lot of military history stuff. That's why, like back in the day on PC, played a lot of the close combat games, or my cousin played a lot of Silent Hunter and loved those submarine simulations. And I bring that up specifically to say what's also incredible about early access and a lot of indie dev. We saw it in Crow Country this year, or Crow County, Signalis, and a bunch of other stuff. We've kind of moved from our nostalgia era is 8-bit, 16-bit, and now we're going into this, well, what if we kind of do hyper better looking jaggy polygons of N64 PS1 look, and eventually we'll get to the PS2 version of nostalgia. So we're moving into what we've just been referencing, but all that to say, what's crazy with early access is you have so many quote unquote dream games. The fidelity of the graphics are not going to be AAA. However, I've mentioned this to Carrot in the past, and I've talked about it with a lot of friends, but you have games like Gloomhaven that are still in early access. I'm pretty sure I'm quoting it correctly in name. But Gloomhaven is designed by one person, or originally was one person, which is basically, I think Thief is one of the best immersive sims. I want to make a more comprehensive, incredible Thief, and it can kind of look like the original Thief graphically, except it's going to have modern tech and way more design ethos that's been developed since then. And it's done extremely well in early access, still isn't out, and it keeps growing and growing and growing. There is a submarine hunting game that is basically like the most in-depth version of what a Silent Hunter used to be, and that game has hundreds of thousands of early access purchases. People are beginning to be like, hey, this genre that no longer exists, but did when it was cheaper to make games, we're not going to chase high fidelity. We're just going to try to make a perfect version of that. Stardew Valley is an example of that. And reading, for people who like actually getting really in depth on this stuff, if you read Jason Schreier's book, his first one, Blood, Sweat, and Pixels, hearing that whole journey, I mean, the guy almost had a few psychotic breaks because of how he was just him doing everything. But it is also, it's that thing of like, part of that was also because every few seconds or every few weeks, he'd be like, oh yeah, but like, wouldn't it be cool if I could add this into the game? Yeah, I guess I'll do that. And then he eventually had to stop and release it and then just keep adding stuff afterwards, and then created a team to basically let him take a break and just add more content. And that game has become a platform in itself. But that all comes out of this like, hey, we're all chasing, like all these major companies are just kind of making the same game over and over again. And then it just comes down to, is your writing better? which
So-
is why Naughty Dog stands out so well. And then in the meantime, these indie developers are like, or we could actually serve the underserved market and have a mega hit.
To consolidate the thinking there, right, is if you're like Marvel, for example, or LucasArts, or if you're in charge of one of these big IPs, does it become a better gamble to pitch the AA option for your top tier IP, seeing like, hey, let's not spend this crazy sum of money so then we don't have to have this psychotic sales goal.
I think the heyday of Telltale would agree with you.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think there's plenty of evidence to support it, right? But it's like, does this actually inform any sort of changes where we've seen like post-COVID, like a bunch of AAA studios deciding to save money? I'm not going to that expo. E3 gone for that reason, right? But then PAX is a little less attended by some of the big players. Not, it seemed like expo participation seemed to go down for AAAs across the board. GDC, PAX. Is cost savings going to be one of those strategies for some of these companies moving forward, rather than just like, it seems like an obvious thing and a huge advantage that we have on the indie and single and AA side. I'm just curious if that will ever get to, hey, we're making a new Star Wars game that we have to go with a AAA studio and there's no discussion.
What depresses me, and Carrot, I know you're much better with pure numbers, so I won't go into that regard in case anything's clicking in your brain for that. But I think you're spot on, Alex. I think what's extra heartbreaking about also a lot of the ripple effects in the industry with closures and whatnot, I think a lot can be tied back. I mean, yes, a lot of it has to do with interest rates being high, and so they just don't want to invest in things that don't have huge returns. There's some great documentaries about that kind of logic out there by NoClip and other people that really go into a little bit more of the nitty gritty. But beyond that, I think so much of the mid-tier problem comes down to the implosion of Embracer. Because you referenced Time Splitters earlier and stuff like that. Embracer was, and clearly doing it in an immensely flawed way, so I'm not trying to pat them on the back here, but their whole business model was, let's get out an F-ton of remasters of those old classics. Like, they started the whole get studios like Aspyr, ASPYR, Aspire, whatever that is, to do all the, like, let's just crack out updated ports of all the old Disney games. We'll release them on limited run, and then 2 months later, we're going to have a simpler package of 2 of the games together. Get both Jedi Academy games out. Get these out. And
now we got remasters of like 6-year-old games now. It's just like,
that blows my mind.
What are we doing here? We didn't need a remaster of Horizon.
Doing well. Until Dawn that just came out.
Oh,
and of course it's not doing well because there's also no marketing behind it. I think a lot of those remasters have less to do with, is it necessary? And I'm convinced a lot of that is Sony just not wanting to spend money on a new game.
Is that the economical choice they're making? Is like, okay,
so.
All right,
they're betting on the bigger stuff. Yeah.
Right. Here's where we can spend 10% of what we would have spent on another original idea.
Bones, 100%.
Yeah.
We're just cleaning it up, and then even if it sells nothing, it's probably not as big of a dent. Also, it can potentially, at least that was the argument for the original Last of Us remaster, is to say like it's a way to also familiarize yourself with the new tech, so you don't lose time in development. Hypothetically,
that's an interesting. Yeah, I didn't consider that as a benefit, but it's like a lot of times I see these side by side remasters, and I'm like, which one's the better one? I can't tell.
Demon's Souls made sense to me because I played the original Demon's Souls.
It should blow me away. It should blow me away, the side by side.
Stunning. Yes, exactly. And the new one, I was like, oh my god, it's not broken every 2 seconds.
It seems like a stylistic change, not necessarily a technological improvement.
Yeah, that's what kills me. I'm with you. It makes no sense to me. It just feels like I even think about, like, there's now an Alien Isolation sequel that just got announced. That first game, some people don't like it, totally get it, might not be your cup of tea. I'm not a big horror person, but I love Creative Assembly, and I love the Alien franchise, so I gave it a try, and I loved that game. But it's that thing of, like, that's the team That's the studio that's been making Total War since the 90s. And then they had a spin-off team to basically be like, we're going crazy just doing Total War.
Mhm.
And that first one that I remember was Spartan Total Warrior, which was a aggressively mediocre PS2 God of War-like kind of action game. And then they did that Viking Asgard or whatever Viking game on PS3 and Xbox 360 that was a empty-ish open world but was fun. And then they did Alien Isolation. And then that team was doing the giant Sega online shooter that got canceled a few years ago after they sunk like 100 million or close to it into it.
What was that?
Can't even remember what it was called. Never even came out. It was just an in-development game, and the rumors were somewhere between like 60 to 100 something million were spent in development to make this mega. They wanted their what we've been talking about, their platform game, their Helldivers, their Overwatch, and they weren't happy with where it was, so Sega pulled the plug. And I remember hearing that meant that most of that team was let go. And so I'm sure a bunch of the heads were folded back in, so they didn't actually leave. But then when I hear that there's a sequel to Alien Isolation, I'm like, you just killed that team. I thought. Like, so who's making it now? And what familiarity? And they might have all their assets very easy to read, and it's an easy transfer. And so I we're talking in a vacuum of hypotheticals. We're not in that team in that space, but it's like I mentioned Jason Schreier before, and his newest book just came out, Play Nice, and it's the whole his after 380 interviews in terms of 380 individual people. It is the story of the rise, fall, and the current state of Blizzard. It's basically a giant story of Blizzard from its beginning to this last year, literally, and it's supposed to be very, 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 very good. All three of his books, this being the third one, I've only read the first two. Press Reset and Blood, Sweat, and Pixels are fantastic if you want to get a better sense of what is the personal cost of making a game, which is the first one. Press Reset is all about how awful closures are and what it does to people. And it's using different stories of Volition and others and different extremes of closure and the reasons behind why it happens, and going into the, as we would always argue, but like you just let off so many people and Bobby Kotick got a $100 million bonus kind of thing. But it's that weird thing where, again, going back to the Time Splitters thing, you had a studio or a production house that kind of understood, hey, there is no mid-tier anymore. There is no AA. After THQ went under, THQ Nordic and that whole thing kind of kept that afloat a little bit, again, with a lot of these remasters and whatnots. And then Embracer just bought up studios like crazy, basically designed to fit that gap. But then they were clearly waiting for $2 billion from the Saudi Arabia fund that they didn't get overnight, and they started canceling everything.
Yeah.
And then that aftermath, it's just been a constant spiral since then. And that, I only bring this all up, I know I can speak in tangents, so I apologize, but it becomes this giant thing where, at the end of the day, everyone's terrified their games won't make enough money so that they can't stay alive anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's the case, your producers are always going to funnel you into, the easy thing is to say safe, but beyond just the idea of safe, they're going to funnel you to the median, the what does everyone understand? And that, to me, is the entire crux, to bring it back to the original question, of the Ubisoft problem.
Mm-hmm. What works today? Let's reverse engineer a game based on what are the top 10 games of the year. What's making the most money? Right.
It's always their formula because they're always in the top.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's right. It's crazy.
Yeah, I know, Karen, Chris, I know you have to run to another call. I think we touched on so many different things. I think I have a better idea as to how I think I want to structure some of these conversations, because we're getting to some really, really interesting stuff here. And I think we're figuring some things out. I think we need to run this up the chain. Let's get the CEOs over at Ubisoft on the line here, and we can yeah.
Like, hey, man.
We can get them to quadruple A status in no time. All right,
yeah, let's help them. Right, that's gonna be us.
Awesome. All right, guys, thanks for taking the time to chat with me today.
Of course, Alex, thank you.
And then I'm gonna get on your calendars. We can see if we can't make this happen again next week. and I'll line up something for us, something a little bit sunnier instead of grave dancing on Ubisoft's latest flop. The last of which they shared a bunch of user data to Meta.
Did they?
Yes.
I heard about that. Yeah.
So
Oh,
whole
no.
other can of worms that sort of goes well beyond gaming and just into like user data privacy and all the BS and how we're just numbers now. So another major business flub from Ubisoft, but we'll put a pin in that conversation from now. We'll chat a little bit more about some other stuff next week whenever I can find some time in your guys' calendar. So thanks again for joining me. Thanks for everybody watching in the chat. Appreciate you guys hanging out, and we'll catch you guys next time.
Bye.
Bye.